Hello beautiful people, it's your boy Yahya from VR Division. In today's video, we're going to learn about the pre-computed global illumination in Unreal Engine, the indirect lighting. If you're already familiar with some of the information I present in this video, for example what global illumination is, take a look at the timeline to find what you're looking for faster. If you learned something useful today, I would really appreciate it if you can do your boy a favor, leave a like on this video, subscribe if you're not already, and let's get started. Global illumination, also called indirect lighting, simulates lighting interactions with geometry and material surfaces to add realistic lighting to your scenes and projects. The simulation also takes into account the absorption and reflectiveness of the materials with which it interacts. Simulating the way light behaves in 3D worlds is handled in one of two ways, using real-time lighting methods that support light movement and interaction of dynamic lights, or by using pre-computed, baked lighting information that gets stored in textures applied to geometric surfaces. Unreal Engine provides both these ways of lighting scenes, and they're not exclusive to one another, as they can be seamlessly blended with one another. Let's talk about the highlights of each system to help us understand their usage and capabilities. The pre-computed lighting, it's ideal for scenes and projects where lighting does not need to change. Its performance costs are relative to the memory required to load and store the lightmap textures. This is why I say don't go too crazy on your lightmap resolution. The quality and accuracy results is set by the texture resolution of the lightmap texture being baked and applied to geometry. It supports static meshes and BSP geometry by default. Static meshes require setting up a lightmap UV to store the lightmap data. This is why we unwrap everything before we export it to Unreal Engine. And of course, it can be used in combination with dynamic lighting. The dynamic GI is ideal for times where we need to change the light, so if it's a day-night cycle or turning a light on and off. If you're working with a very large or open world environment, sometimes it's just impractical to bake the lights because that could take so much time or could take so much memory. The performance costs can be significantly more expensive to calculate in real time, depending on the method being used. For example, if you're using ray traced GI, the brute force method is more expensive than the final gather method, supports all geometry types by default, and of course can be used in combination with pre-computed lighting. Diffuse interreflection is by far the most visually important global illumination lighting effect. Light bounces by default with the light mass, and the base color term of your material controls how much light and what color bounces in all directions. Here I have a simple Cornell box with few walls and different materials, so one is blue, one is red, and few boxes here, and there are no lights. I'm using Unreal Engine 426, the CPU light mask, everything is default. I'm just going to drag a point light. Let's click on unlit and let's switch back to lit. Once we place the light, it tells us, hey, lighting needs to be rebuilt. We have 7 rebuilt objects, so we can simply click here and click on build lighting only. Give that few seconds. Light bake is finished, and you can see how the color is bleeding across our meshes. So here we have the blue bleeding all the way on the box, and this box have a white material, and we have the red bouncing or bleeding on this box here. So we can control this. For example, if you go to word settings, and if you don't have word settings here, you can go to settings and then click on word settings and it will show up here. So find the option diffuse boost, and let's take this from 1 to something like 3. And let's make a camera. I'm gonna find an angle like this. And I'm going to press Ctrl 1 so it saves as a bookmark. So now if I move my camera, I go back always to that bookmark. I'm gonna press F9 to take screenshot, and the all diffuse boost was on 1, now it's 3. So let's build light again. And you can see how much more bleed we have onto our meshes here. So the more or the higher this value is, the more color bleed we're going to have. So I'm gonna take another screenshot and open my screenshot. This is the first one on diffuse boost set to 1, and this is diffuse boost set to 3. You can see how much color bleed we have. You can control this in other ways, or you can disable it for specific meshes. So let's say we don't want this blue to do any color bleed. You can actually click on the static mesh, go to details, and search for diffuse boost here. And let's set this to 0. Let's click build light and see what will happen. You can see there is no color bleeding at all, or no diffuse interreflection at all coming from this wall, because we set the diffuse boost to 0. Let's set it back to 1, and now I think diffuse interreflection is understandable. Now we understand what diffuse interreflection is. Let's switch to our other map. This is a test room I did quickly in 3ds Max to showcase the different lighting problems we might have. So with that said, there is also a post-process volume with auto exposure disabled. Everyone hates auto exposure, it is what it is. Let's switch to lit mode. As you can see, there is nothing to see because we need the sun, so let's add the sun. The directional light is going to act like our sun. If you have snapping on the rotation grid on, I usually disable that when I'm controlling my lights, so it just gives me more control. Like this feels kinda clunky. And let's say we're fine with this. I'm going to make sure all my static meshes have the same light quality, 64 for now. I'm going to click on build lighting only. So that's Ctrl Shift plus semicolon. If you don't know what semicolon is, it's this guy. So it's somewhere on your keyboard. Now pressing Ctrl Shift semicolon. It will take few seconds to build the light. And now look at this. As you can see, we have indirect lighting everywhere, and that's amazing. I'm going to take notes of every time we build the light, and let's set a camera angle we like. So let's say something like this. I'm gonna press Ctrl 1 on my keyboard to save this as a bookmark. So every time I move my camera, I have this as a bookmark. And the second thing I would like to do is going to Window, Developer Tools, and Output Log, and I'm going to search for Lightmass on, then my computer name, to filter my results here. So this is our light bake here. Ignore all of these are earlier. It took 3 seconds to build the light on this scene, with the settings of the Lightmass on default and the build lighting quality is set on preview. Let's see what problems we have and what could be improved. Here there is strange gradient going on, and we can say almost the same about here. All of these meshes have gray material assigned on all of them. So if you look at the assigned material, it's just a opaque material with the gray color on it, on the base color. It's not always the same gray, especially on these parts here. This is because how CPU Lightmass handles the light bake. Each of these meshes is built on different thread, and this is why we have sometimes these differences between meshes next to each other. The GPU eliminates all of this. You don't have to deal with this when you're using the GPU Lightmass. And the same can be said on the floor meshes here, but there are always small things we can do to improve on this. Some of these problems can be solved with the CPU Lightmass, and some of them you have to move to the GPU Lightmass or change how you model your meshes. So if you don't want to have this on your floors, let's say, then it should be slightly a bigger floor like this, not like this. And the same can be said on the wall. Hey, quick buzz. This video tutorial is sponsored by our masterclass. You can get it on Gumroad. Right now it's in early access. You can get it for 60% less before it leaves early access. If you're looking to master Unreal Engine in architecture, materials, lighting, blueprints, all that good stuff, check out the link in the description. Now let's go back to the tutorial. Something I would like to discuss first is the num indirect light bounces. I'm going to set this to 0, and then I'm going to build the light again. As you can see, we have no indirect lighting anymore because there is just no indirect lighting to bounce. This also took shorter time to finish. Usually the most expensive light bounce is the first, and then the second, the third, and so on is much more cheaper. I'm going back to my view, take screenshot from here, and then I'm going to increase this one from 0 to 1, and then press on build light. This one took 2.6 seconds and we have our first light bounce. I'm gonna put this to 2, then press F9, then click build. The light bake now took 2.7 seconds, so it's like 8 milliseconds extra for the second light bounce. And I'm going to press F9 again. I will locate my folder where I have my screenshots. So this is the first image with num indirect lighting bounces on 0. This is the second one where we set this option on 1. And this image is where we have the indirect light bounces on 2. The max setting you can go with this is 10. So if you put 11, 12, 15, it will just not work. I'm gonna put this now to 10 and build light again. This time it took 2.97 seconds to build the light, and I'm gonna press F9, then go to my screenshot and compare the screenshots here. 0, 1, 2, 10. I'm going to try and put this on something like 50. It took slightly longer, but if we take a screenshot, we will almost see no difference. So this is 10 and this is 50. You can see that these dark areas are not lighter in any way. There is something here, however we only see a difference here, not here and not here. Now we took these screenshots. I'm going to rename my images. And now I'm going to make a new folder and just give it a name. I'm going to make all of these available for you guys once we finalize this tutorial series. And now I'm going to switch the build lighting quality from preview to production. And I'm gonna click build light. This time it took 16.8 seconds when we changed the lighting quality from preview to production. And I'm going to take another screenshot, call this 16.8. Ha! Both preview and production starts with P. Production preview. So we need something better. Call it low and production. And let's compare these two images here. So this is on the preview settings and this is on the production settings. Obviously production settings is way much better than preview. That's for good reasons. And one of the other problems now I would like to tackle is the weird gradient we are having with these meshes here. And for that, we're going to discuss the static lighting level scale. I built the light one more time on the default settings and I saved another screenshot with 3 bounces. Now let's go back and see what other settings we can change. The static lighting level scale, if we look at the documentation, basically it is used to decide how much detail to calculate in the lighting. The smaller this number is, the higher quality we're going to get, but it will also greatly increase build times. So with the last final bake we just did right now on these settings, it took 3 seconds. Let's set this camera. I'm gonna set this to Control 2. So now we have 1 for this and now we have 2 to this. And I'm going to take another screenshot on these default settings. Now what I'm going to do is to set this on a value of something like 0.8 and then I'm going to build the light and see if anything is going to change for us. Took slightly more time, not that much. So let's take another screenshot and let's set to something like 0.5 and click build. Light bake is finished. It took even slightly more time, so that's from 3 seconds when it was on 1 to 3.2 seconds when it's 0.5. Press F9. I'm going to set this to a value of 0.25 and then I'm going to build the light again. Once light bake is finished, just give it a few seconds. Now you can see it took 3.9 seconds and it introduced some new artifacts. I'm going to show you how we can fix this later. Let's take another screenshot and open our screenshots folder, and this is the first image where we had our value on 1. This is 0.8 and as you can see here we're starting to somehow see less of the weird gradients on our meshes or the artifacts. and this is 0.25. And as you can see now, when we went too extreme with this, we just introduced new problems. That's okay. Let's select our first image and call it Static Lighting Level Scale 1. I changed the lighting quality from preview to production while I kept this on 0.25, and it took from 4 seconds to 30 seconds. That's way many times more. However, if you want to compare the results, so this one is 0.25 where we introduced new problems, and then when we switched it from preview to production, you can see the difference. 0.25 could be extreme. So let's try something like 0.5 and also compare it preview to production. You always need to find the sweet spot for your settings if you're using the CPU Lightmass. So this is static level scale on 0.5 preview settings. We can see things look okay. This took about 4 seconds. And the next one where we changed the light bake to production, it took 22 seconds, but there is also a much better result generally. This is the other one, 0.25, production, preview, production, preview. And the next thing I'm going to talk about is the indirect lighting quality. Usually this is set to 1, and the more we increase this, the indirect lighting is going to look better, but it will also take much longer to bake the light. In order to see the effects of the indirect lighting quality, we need to build on something that's higher than preview. Let's find a nice location where we have some indirect lighting and switch this one from 1 to 2. And what we will do now is switching from preview, medium, high and production. Take screenshot, change the lighting quality to medium and build. Once light bake is finished, let's take now another screenshot and let's switch from medium to high. Click build. Let's take another screenshot and switch to production, then click build again. And you can see the first one on preview took 3.7, the second one on medium took 6 seconds, and the third one took 11 seconds, and now this should take like 16 or 20. So again, this is indirect lighting quality on 2, on preview, and it took 4 seconds, nothing really special. This is now medium, and this is high, and this is production. Very interesting results. However, what I'm going to do now is switching the indirect lighting quality from 2 to 4, and then I'm going to build light again. And I also believe the highest option we can go on here is also 10, so it won't do anything more than 10. Now it's set on 4, let's build light again. The two settings we need to be very careful when we are using, it's the indirect lighting quality and the static lighting level scale. These two guys alone can increase the render times exponentially. So let's talk about what happened now. We set the indirect lighting quality on 2 and 4 and we built both on production. So the first image on production took 26 seconds. The lighting quality is on 2 and this is what we have. And the second image is on 4 and it took double the time almost, and this is what we got. So this is 2, this is 4. We can see there is definitely improvement in the indirect lighting, but the same for the time it took to build the light. This is another camera, the indirect lighting quality on 2, it took 26 seconds, and this is the next one where we don't see much difference visually, but took double the time. So sometimes the changes happens from place to place. I will never understand the CPU Lightmass. Next on the list is the indirect lighting smoothness. It is useful in some lighting conditions when Lightmass cannot resolve accurate indirect lighting. One is the default value. Sometimes you may want to increase this if you want to make the indirect lighting smoother. or decrease it to make it more accurate. Values like 3 or more are going to make you lose detail. So to save you some time, I went ahead and did some tests on different settings on 2 different cameras from 3 to 0.66. So this is the first camera, indirect lighting smoothness on 3. Look at this area, we almost have no indirect lighting, and now this is 2. We're starting to get like the indirect lighting now is smoother, and this is the default value of 1, so it's like good. Now if you want to increase this to make it more accurate, you start reducing this below 1. So this is a value of 0.9, this is a value of 0.85, this is a value of 0.75, and you can see what effect it's making, and this is a value of 0.66. This is another camera, so this is a value of 3. It's looking pretty bad, so this is value 2 where it looks much better, and this is 1, the normal default value, and here we are 0.9. We can look at this area, so let's just enlarge this. Look at this area here and these areas where we have indirect lighting. So again 1, 0.9, 0.85, so 0.9, 0.85, 0.75, and you can see now the indirect lighting here is like much more defined. Next on the list is the environment color. It represents a constant color light surrounding the upper hemisphere of the level, so imagine it like a sphere around our level, like a sky. This light source currently does not get bounced as indirect lighting and causes reflection captures brightness to be incorrect. So it's preferred to use a static skylight instead. So it's not really recommended to use this guy. However, let's turn it into something like this. Let's see what happens when we build the light. So there's the color we chose, and you can see how it somehow interacts with the scene. It's kind of weird. So for this example, I'm going to get rid of our directional light. So I'm gonna press Ctrl X and paste it somewhere so I can bring it back. And I'm going to set this on a color that's white, like so. And the environment intensity is just going to make this environment color more intense. So let's set this to something like 5. And just notice here, once we bake the light again. So light bake is finished. You can see it acts like an ambient light, but there is no indirect shadowing. So there are absolutely no shadows from this mesh and like many others. So it's like super weird. Yeah. Direct or indirect. Actually, there is indirect shadowing, but not direct shadowing. So I don't recommend using this. So let's set it to black and let's bring back our directional light. Set it to static for now. Let's get this guy here. So the next option on the list is the use ambient occlusion. So I'm going to enable this, and real quick, if you want to read in the documentation, feel free to read all of this, but Lightmass calculates detailed indirect shadows automatically. So all these indirect shadows here are calculated automatically. It can be useful to exaggerate indirect shadows for artistic purposes or to enhance the perception of proximity in a scene. Here are settings to control the ambient occlusion. I'm going to leave now everything at default except for the max occlusion distance so we can see what's going on. I'm gonna set this from 200 to something like 50. And I'm going to bake the light. So if we look at the corners or where we have meshes intersecting, we should have some ambient occlusion. But for that to look good, we need to increase the light map resolution on our meshes. Feel free to experience with visualize ambient occlusions. When you enable this, you can only see the ambient occlusion. Let's actually try that. Since it's a video, we can make it fast. You can see this is the ambient occlusion in our scene. So mainly it's in these areas. Alright, I'm gonna disable this. What I'm going to do now is actually click Ctrl X on my directional light again, just paste it here again, and I'm going to place a skylight. On this skylight, I am going to change it from SLS capture scene to SLS cap specific cube map to choose an HDRI, and I'm going to set this on static, and I'm going to build the light again. So I'm going to talk now on Lightmass, importance, volume, and Lightmass portals. When the light bake is finished, we can take some screenshots to show you what's up. Alright, so light bake is finished, and wow, it's like so dark in here and it's not that good, but you can see at least we can get some stuff from our window here, not like the environment color, so they're not the same. What can we do now? You can use HDRIs to light your projects. With the CPU Lightmass it's kinda harder, so let's click the Skylight again and let's increase the intensity of this. So the intensity scale, let's set it to something like 10, see if it's going to change anything. Now the lighting looks much better since we have higher intensity, and we can also increase the intensity on the indirect lighting. So let's go ahead and also do that. I'm gonna do this on something like 5, build the light again. So these areas here where we have indirect lighting should look brighter. Nice. Now the indirect lighting could be improved, especially when you use a Skylight or even a directional light when using the CPU Lightmass. When we go to visualize the volumetric light map now, we can tell Unreal Engine to focus this volumetric light map. Now it's going like way too far away from the scene. How can we focus this? Well, for this, there is the Lightmass importance volume. It basically tells the engine to focus the Lightmass build, or especially on the indirect lighting quality on this area. So you can go to place actors, then to volumes. You can find it here, or you can just search for it from here. Lightmass importance volume and Lightmass portals. We're gonna discuss these two now. So let's take a look at the documentation here. This is a massive map, and these are some background meshes we can see from our playable area. And here on the right, we have our playable area. By using Lightmass importance volume, we told Lightmass to focus or reduce the region of light from 80,000 units to 10,000 units. And that's like, for this example here, 64 times less area to light. So let's do the same here. I'm going to press Lightmass importance volume, press G just in case you cannot see it, then just surround our map with it, our playable area with it, like so, and then I'm going to build the light. You can see it's much more focused on this area, so that's one thing we can do. And when we are using a Skylight to light our projects, so I'm going to set a camera here, and let's disable these guys for now. So I'm going back to show, visualize, volumetric light map. Let's just disable this and go to an angle like this, and I'm going to press Ctrl 6 or any number to set a bookmark. And what can we do is using the Lightmass portals to help Lightmass determine where the light is coming from. And these Lightmass portals and the Lightmass importance volume, I believe they are only useful in the CPU Lightmass. If we put them in the GPU Lightmass, they just gets ignored. So needs further testing, but that's something we can also do in the second part of this video. And you need to place the Lightmass portals in every opening of your interior project. Anywhere where you have light coming in, you need to place these guys. Let's build the light. I'm going to take screenshot here and a screenshot here. Let's keep only one actually. This would be just easier to see the changes. So you can see these areas here. Some of them would just improve all the indirect lighting here by placing the Lightmass portals. However, you should also keep in mind, by placing Lightmass portals, it will slightly increase light bake, and this time I think it took double the time. It's 100% worth it. To finalize this video and not to make it too long, well, Yahya, what do you do as final settings on your project? Well, let's bring back our directional light like so. So I like to use Skylight and a directional light. And then on the worst settings, let's call it a day and do the final settings to finalize this. So the final settings for most of projects, they usually look something like this. If you want more skylight bounces, we don't want to play with intensity, we can actually play with this. So let's do something like 5, 10, that's fine. Let's do this at 3, and this is like usually 0.95 or 0.8. I don't go below 0.8. So if you press Alt 0, you can visualize your light maps density. So in ArchViz projects, you need the between green and orange areas, so to get nice shadows, and those red, they have to go because this is like very high light map resolution, which is 64 on such a small mesh. The engine is telling you, hey, this does not make sense with this, like this is 64 and this is 64, so this could be something that's like way much less. So what you need to do actually is to match the size of the boxes across your project to get constant shadow quality. So if this light, for example, cross this area where we have like green and blue, the shadow is going to look completely different, the quality of the shadow, unless they have the same density of the light map. I'm not gonna increase the light map resolution, I'm gonna keep everything as 64. Let's just remember this as it is in the video and let's actually have some fun. So let's go to place actors, bring a light, put a point light here, set it on 2, do the same, and let's just build the light. Hey, we're back. Light bake took almost 4 minutes. It looks so much better, like I love this. It's totally possible to achieve lovely results with the CPU Lightmass. Just look at this. The only thing we need to do now in order to improve on this is actually selecting these meshes and increasing the light map resolution just like we discussed 2 minutes ago. So that's that. I hope you found this video useful. In the next video, I'm going to compare Lushuang's GPU Lightmass to the CPU Lightmass. The short answer, hey, if you can use Lushuang GPU Lightmass, use it. However, wait for the next video, I'm going to compare all these guys together. I hope you enjoyed this, subscribe if you're not already, don't forget to leave a like, and I will see you guys in the next one. Cheers! Hello Habibi, I hope you found today's tutorial useful. Don't forget to leave a like, share this with your friends, this is the best way to support us. And again, if you'd like to check out our masterclass in architecture, check out the link in the description. This is also one of the best ways to support us making more videos. So thank you for that. I will see you soon. Bye bye.